deficiency diseases, physical degeneration, and the progressive genetic decline of the human race. Notice that we didn't say anything about genetics or germs, okay? Next, for the first time this is number 201, DDNH number 201, but for the first time in the 200 episode history of all these events that I've done over the last 10 years, I will simply what I'm going to do is just read a document, and I want to do that to record it for posterity, and you will be able to replay it and rewind it and listen to it and forward it to people, your friends and family, just to appreciate the facts that are presented, because you will start seeing that everything that we're teaching here, it's not new. It's been around for a while, right? You will recognize the suppressed genius of a man who had little opportunity to become widely known, yet modern research and headlines echo his wisdom without ever knowing his name. He witnessed the beginnings of the fake food empires, now known to be responsible for the widespread government-sanctioned poisoning of all of humanity. Very interesting stuff. And then his predictions were made between the early 20s and the early 60s. I'll explain that a little bit later. They were in direct opposition to all of the scientific consensus of the time, but they have been thoroughly vindicated by current research and statistical facts, even those included in 2024. As you can see, just by looking around at society and walking through a cemetery, sometimes you can even see, just look at the gravestones. You will learn how vitamin deficiency became institutionalized. That is a Royal Lee quote right there, by government and medicine. Are you ready to get into this? Good. First, we need to cover a few things. Right here, people are indoctrinated, fluoridated, medicated, vaccinated, glyphosated, cosmeticated, food sedated, and irradiated. What do I mean by that? Well, it is very likely that your coworkers and your family members and the people that are on the internet screaming at their phones, cutting their hair because of who won the election, it's very likely that all of these things, or some other than, some bigger ones rather than, this one, it might be 30%, 10%, 20%. Maybe somebody's not using, we'll get to that in a minute. But it's very likely that some people have differing opinions differing views because of some of these in varying, I can't think of the word, in varying ratios. Effects of these will eventually lead to misdiagnosis and inevitable drugging for life. If you do not know about these, you are going to be on a different road. Families and workplaces are in conflict over misunderstood physiology as well as fraudulent science. Indoctrinated, what are some examples of that? Oh, I don't know. Media, fake news, government propaganda, stupid sports games. I call it sports ball, all kinds of stuff. All the bread and circuses. Fluoridation. Why is fluoridation something that we're talking about now? Well, what's happened within the last few weeks where people have been awakened to the idea that water fluoridation probably is a bad idea. RFK talking about getting the fluoride out of the water, right? What about your mouthwash? What about your toothpaste? What about the fluoride in the nursery water for newborns made by Nestle, right? You can find that in any Rite Aid, CVS, Walgreens. How about medication? Is anyone medicated in this nation or in this world? Prescriptions, over the counter, you name it, man. They put it in the air, the food, the water. It's everywhere. I don't know, birth, from birth to the nursing home, they've got you. Like I mentioned, the nursery water with the fluoridation. See, they're killing, 4 birds with 3.5 stones with that one. Look at that. And then the vaccination, everything from vitamin K to the flu shots. I think it's up to 94 doses now by age 18, if you count all the COVID's lethal injection gene therapy crap they've put in there now. And we did a class a little while ago called A Snake in the Vein. Count all your IV hydrotherapy and count all of your injectable peptides as that too. Oh, and one thing I left out here, I just realized, the fluoridation. What's another source of that? A lot of the psych meds. Just keep that in mind. Number 5, glyphosated. That's all the wheat and flour products. Everybody's falling for the gluten-free scam. The gluten-free scam now is the same as the Diet Coke thing. Sugar-free thing was 40 years ago. It's going to be found out that it's not the gluten, it's the glyphosate. So everybody's poisoned by the highly, and atrazine, highly overused chemical desiccants and herbicides and things like that, and pesticides. So similar symptoms too, if you get overdosed on this, similar symptoms to the same disease that everybody was throwing a diaper on their face for a few years ago. Number 6, cosmeticated. What do I mean by that? Well, all of your sensitive mucous membranes are covered by horrible toxins and poisons created by pharmaceutical subsidiaries. Some of you would call that makeup or personal care products or hair dye or whatever. Food sedated. What does that mean? Fast food, all the crap that's out there, all the fake food. You're going to learn a lot about that tonight. Preservatives, colors, dyes, fast foods. Anything that your great-grandparents would not recognize as food, despite how you pray over it, Christians. And then number 8 is irradiated. What do I mean by this? Of course, all of the crazy stuff that's irradiating all of your food, yeah, that's still there. But to make matters worse, now you bring it home, put a TV dinner in the microwave, and now you're nuking your food. Horrible, horrible idea. But they also gas your fruits, cell phones, 5Gs, X-rays, TSA backscatter machines at the airport. People have their AirPods in, screwing their brain. So if people are screaming in their phone with their AirPods on while they just drank some tap water, got a shot, took a couple psych meds, do you see, and they just got done watching a bunch of crap on TV telling you that literally Hitler just took over the country. Do you see how literally Hitler, that's what they say, literally Hitler. Do you see how a person doing all 8 of those in one day wouldn't be a big stretch, and you might disagree with them? That's where we are. You're not talking to humans anymore. So how did we arrive here? What changed? I don't think I've ever shared this before, but I think it's so poignant for this class because people need to know there's this year called 1989. You might have heard of it, and it's widely known and widely recognized, widely cited as what's called the Gateway Year. Has anybody heard this? Well, a lot of scientists, a lot of people, a lot of doctors, a lot of, people will just say something happened in 1989. Late 80s, some people say the late 80s, but 1989 is widely known as the Gateway Year. They call it the Gateway Year. Why? Well, I've put together a list. A lot of people can't figure this out. I put this list together, and I'm going to show you something else that something was divinely shown to me a few years back that I want to piece this together for you. Number 1, one of the biggest things that I think the current administration is going to try to fix is the fact that there was direct-to-consumer television advertising of pharmaceuticals started right around that time. There's only one other country in the world where that is legal, and that's New Zealand, and they're commies. So we have direct-to-consumer television advertising of pharmaceuticals everywhere. You see it everywhere now. That was not the case before 1989. The drug companies, remember, the drug companies won the war on drugs because what was happening in the 80s? Remember that Just Say No, Dare to Keep Kids Off Drugs? Remember all the campaigns they had in public schools to keep people away from drugs? Well, the drug companies won. Why? Because nobody's smoking a plant, but they're all on Adderall. Very good ideas. Psych drugs for kids across the board. Number 3, never saw this before. This started in the 50s and 60s. A Nazi actually developed the birth control pill. Strangely enough, right? But it wasn't widely accepted until 80s, 90s. Birth control pills, hormone replacement therapy became common, very common. Number 4, big agriculture introduced genetically modified organisms. That was brand new. Number 5, related to it, big ag greatly increased pesticide and herbicide use, leading to the glyphosation and the atrazination of the nation, so to speak. Number 6, Hollywood mind control programming filth grew stronger and more pervasive. How? Remember video stores? How about video games in every bedroom? How about MTV on every TV? How about video stores in every town? How about VCRs? This is all new. So 1989, Gateway Year, starting to make sense. Definitely starting to make sense. Number 7, the CDC's childhood vaccination schedule more than tripled in number since then, since 1989. Number 8, new autoimmune diseases skyrocketed. We'll talk about this fairly substantially. Number 8. Number 9, remember this? Artificial sweeteners were added to the already compromised food supply. They were never invented until the mid-80s, 84, 85, 86. Remember the Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi wars? Artificial aspartame, NutraSweet, that's where that came from, mid-80s. Number 10, Fat was demonized, and so began the no-fat, low-fat diet craze. You see how this is all ending up in just a perfect storm for the last 40, 50 years? And you're thinking, well, people are just getting weird. Yeah, no, they've been weird for a while, and they got weirder in 1989. But number 10 there was responsible for, that's where no-fat, low-fat, where do you think all the hormone problems came from the last 50 years? It's because they weren't eating fat. Number 11, refined sugars and processed foods exploded into every school, every supermarket, every gas station, every vending machine. That's no surprise. We've talked about that ad nauseum in these events. Number 12, geoengineering projects increased by orders of magnitude. The clouds I used to play under when I was a kid, very different than the clouds that we see nowadays. And now, thankfully, because of what's happening in the world, people are finally talking about this. Because a few months ago, some places in the mountains got wiped off the map horribly, and there have been some wildfires and weird weather things happening in the world that people are very much awakening to nowadays. Number 13, proliferation of EMFs with remote controls, cable television, wireless devices, cellular phones began. Remember, you didn't have a TV remote until the 80s. Number 14, it's my favorite. Microwaves made their way into nearly every American home, and a lot of times they had those little, you pull your Hot Pocket out, tear it out of the plastic, turn the little metal susceptor tray over, put the Hot Pocket on top of the little metal tray, set your microwave on 4 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever, and the little aluminum coated susceptor tray magically heats your fake food, your little Hot Pocket, and you have food in 2 or 3 minutes because of your microwaves. I haven't used a microwave in probably 8-10 years. But people still have them in their homes, and they still use them every day. And number 15, chemical companies, and I'm sure there are many more than this. This is just the list I've been able to come up with. But chemical companies propagated Teflon, all the nonstick pans, and all the nonstick carpet and clothing. I forget the Stain Master carpet, Teflon. And then clothing made from recycled plastic like spandex. When did that start? 80s, right? All of these things culminating into a perfect storm, boom. We've got a lot of problems ever since the 80s, the gateway year. So despite the visionary genius of who we're going to talk about tonight, Dr. Royal Lee, he could never have predicted the majority of the list above. Remember, everything we're going to talk about tonight came before any of this. Next. This I want to show you. I've only shown this one other time in these classes. It's poignant because I went to a museum. It was a crime museum, and this was one of the displays. There was a whole series. It's a history of crime and capital punishment and torture and this and that. But it was mainly a crime museum. And the last little exhibit was this thing on serial killers. And this sent chills up my spine when I read this because I went, "That's exactly what we're dealing with." I'll read this to you for the nosebleed seats in the back. There are 2 kinds of serial killers as far as the victim is concerned. The kind you don't see before they pounce on you, and the kind you see and don't expect to pounce on you. So, while some may feign horror at the idea of serial killers in a museum, turn on your television. Any night of the week, on practically any channel, you will find a procedural drama in pursuit of a killer. From focusing directly on the murderer in shows like Dexter to those who hunt them down, as in the many franchises of NCIS, CSI, and Law & Order, we're fascinated by what makes these individuals do what they do. The names and deeds of the most infamous serial killers are etched on our collective consciousness, making connections such as a fear of clowns tied to John Wayne Gacy, or the dangerous good looks of Ted Bundy. Nearly 20 years after his death, the cannibalism of Jeffrey Dahmer is still considered enough of a cultural touchstone to be referenced in a 2013 Katy Perry song, Dark Horse. In quotes, "She'll eat your heart out like Jeffrey Dahmer." Here's the part I want you to see. This is the continuation of that placard. I want you to see this. Very interesting. I've only shared this in one other class. So, it goes on, the same placard. It says, "We are fascinated by the dark side and what makes a particular person act on impulses, while most do not. Curious to the motives that turn an ordinary person into a killer." Oh, whoops, I messed up that sentence. "While aims of wetting the bed or cruelty to animals in childhood are set out as indicators, the truth is that there's no solid matrix for predicting what will influence human behavior. This does perhaps explain the insatiable interest the public holds for the topic. a deep-seated need to have cause and effect explained. Here it is. While the stereotype is that all serial killers are white males, since most of the famous ones are, the percentage of white males among serial killers since the 1900s hovers around 50%. It's true that women are much less likely to be serial killers. However, for some reason, serial killers are a particularly American creation, with nearly 3,000 cases in the last 100 years, compared to less than 200 in the United Kingdom, the next highest. 1987 is considered the deadliest known year for serial killers in the United States, with 361 confirmed victims. What stands out to you there?
The 80s.
Interesting. And when I read this, I was driving around, this is over in Pigeon Forge. It's the East Alcatraz Crime Museum. And so I was driving around one day, and I felt like, Lord, what do you want me to go see? And I looked over, a few minutes later, I looked over at a stoplight, and I saw this East Alcatraz Crime Museum, just a political sign, like sticking out of the, near the exit, near the red light. And so I thought, yeah, I wouldn't mind going to see that. Maybe there's something for me to see there. And when I read this sentence right here, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I went, serial killers, a particularly American creation. You don't hear about Russian, Mexican, Polish serial killers. You hear about American serial killers. So why is that? Hair on the back of my neck stood up, of course. And I thought, this is what you wanted me to see. I get it now. So I put this in one class a while back. So that was the first and only time I've ever mentioned it, other than here. But the next thing I want you to see is 1987. And I knew. I'm standing there reading this thing. Nobody knows why 1987. Nobody knows. I'm standing there and I'm going, I do. This is interesting. I'll put that on my list, and I'll put it in a class one of these days. There it is. To prove my point a little further, too, American creation, 3,000 cases in the last 100 years compared to less than 200 to the next highest. So you've got 3,000 cases in the United States, and the number 2 slot is the UK with 200. We've got over 15 times higher. Isn't that nuts? And 1987 was the gangbuster year. Isn't that interesting? Next, I want you to see this too. Lack of minerals and vitamins in our food. I'll prove it to you further. I'll prove it to you. I'll take you one step further. Lack of minerals and vitamins in our food lead to mental health issues like aggression and violence. I'll read this. I know it's small. School lunches and fast food are so deficient of minerals, one would have to eat 7 to 300 or more of each meal to receive the recommended daily intake of essential vitamins and minerals. Did you see that? Yeah, you might want to take a picture of this. Food and Behavior, The Natural Connection author, Barbara Reed Stitt, Lifetime Achievement recipient, says this: the one thing that criminals, parolees, and serial killers all had in common was that they bragged that they lived on junk food. The one thing that they all had in common wasn't that they dressed up like a clown for Halloween. It wasn't that they tore up animals. It was that they all bragged that they lived on junk food. With supplementation, violent acts in prison dropped 50 to 70% in 1 to 2 weeks. Isn't that interesting? 70% recidivism rate reversal with 1 year of Whole Foods. Recidivism. Do they do the same crime that they originally got convicted for? So 70% recidivism rate reversal, you reversed it with 1 year of Whole Foods. Isn't that interesting? In animal studies, cannibalistic mother hamster behavior reversed immediately upon vitamin B3 admin, and highly processed, sugary, GMO, and glyphosate agrotoxic food is nutrient deficient and toxic, with this right here saying number of Chick-fil-A sandwiches needed to meet USDA recommended daily intake of vitamin B3, 380, 333. Vitamin B3 is necessary for brain function. A lack of vitamin B3 has been linked to violent behavior. We'll talk more about that. Royal Lee already knew that 100 years ago. But look at that. So you want to know why we have so much aggression and violence and so many blue-haired or now shaven-headed people yelling into their phones, griping about literally Hitler? You want to know? Here it is. With that being said, here's the last little bit I want to get to before we get to the actual, we're flying, before we get to the actual document. Out of all of our, the food room supplements here, I want you to know, there are about 170 standard process products. All of the MediHerb tablets and capsules that we use, there's about 65 different products. And then all of the MediHerb liquids that we use are about 48. There are another few companies that we use, namely homeopathic liquids, alcohol-based, water-based. a few other things that we use, but mainly standard process and MediHerb. This is our armamentarium. So you have to know a lot of different products and how they work. Next. All credit for all the document that we're going to go through here in a minute. It's about a 12-page document. It'll take me about 45 minutes to read it. I have 40 minutes to read it. But all of this is a wonderfully worded, very well put together document, and I can't do anything but give Mark Anderson credit for it. So, and Saline River Press, if you want to go to salineriverpress.com, you can find all kinds of interesting stuff. There's a historical archive there. Talk to me about it later, or ask me at the end, and I could tell you all about what's on Saline River Press and who Mark Anderson is. But Mark Anderson is a wonderful educator. He's been a standard process guru for 52 years, going on 53 years. And I tell you, he's the trainer of trainers. And he's a wonderful educational resource that I have been blessed with. But he wrote a document that I'm going to share with you. Saline River Press is the distribution arm of all of the nutritional information that's out there. So I want to thank them for disseminating this document, which is in the liner notes of a recording of Royal Lee lectures titled The Lectures of Royal Lee, Volume 2. That was a lot of work for Mark to go through all of these old lectures and put them together. A lot of work. So I'll do my best to describe the more technical definitions, like if he gets into the weeds with some, medical terminology stuff, I'll try to spell it all out, or medical aspects of this document, but I simply could not paraphrase a word. To do so, I suppose, would be a great disservice to the legacy of Dr. Lee as to the writing skill of Mark Anderson. So keep these points in mind while we're going through this. These are very important. Keep these points in mind. This document was published, the thing I'm going to read you was published 2003. So it's about 21 years ago, and it summarizes lectures delivered from about 54 to 64, okay? All of these ideas, though, Royal Lee talked about from the 20s to the 60s, but these are all, a lot of the stuff is coming out of lectures that were recorded between 54 and 64. To this day, most medical doctors and even most of the science textbooks often confess ignorance regarding the origins of many modern health problems or diseases. To this day, they will not tell you that, rheumatoid arthritis is anything but your body attacking its own joints, or that, scleroderma is anything but your body attacking its own skin. To this day. And they'll say, we don't know what causes it, but we know we can fix it with this drug. It's lunacy, absolute lunacy. Structural, chemical, and emotional stressors are left completely unaddressed by most of modern healthcare. And within that chemical, you've heard me talk about it, structural, chemical, emotional, the 3 points of the triangle. That chemical part of the triangle can either be too much toxin or not enough nutrition. So nutritional deficiency or chemical toxicity. I always like to review that with people. We cover that in a lot of classes. I haven't talked about it in a while, though. Make sure you understand that. Genes and germs are the medical industry's frequent scapegoats, leading to genetic injections for germ eradication, which we saw just a few years ago. Major organizations to combat disease have accomplished nothing despite endless funding through events and donations. What do I mean by that? American Heart Association, American Cancer Society, Alzheimer's, arthritis, name it. And you all get St. Jude's Children's Hospital's Cancer Research Center crap in the mail. I know, we all do. Pharmaceutical companies, I went through a class, I don't remember which one it was, but I told you where St. Jude's Children's Cancer Research Hospital came from. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting chain of events that led to that hospital. Pharmaceutical companies have cured nothing while promising endless miracle cures over the last century. Can anyone think of a cure? Interesting. They keep saying there's going to be miracle cures. I'm waiting. Right? More people are living off of the treatment of disease than those who are being cured. Think of your relatives, think of the number of pharmacies, think of the number of nursing homes, think of the number of cancer centers, medical centers, all across just this city alone. And you've got more people that are living off the treatment of disease than those who are being cured. And when you have that happening, you're incentivizing the opposite behavior of what you want. You want people getting better, they're not getting better. And Dr. Lee's observations predate many of our terms like organic and many of our retail health food store establishments like Whole Foods, back before the word health food wasn't even a thing, because if you call something health food, what are you calling everything else? not health food. So some of these terms didn't even exist. The supplement industry, know this, is a wasteland of synthetic megadose nutraceutical companies, often controlled by pharmaceutical subsidiaries. Very simply, 21 predictions of Dr. Roy Lee. Let's get into this. So remember, this was written in 2003, so 21 years ago. So it's interesting, 21 predictions, 21 years ago. Interesting, I didn't plan that. And they're 21 million Bitcoin, just FYI. So let's get into this. Oh, wait. We want to do, let's do, before we get into this, give me a chance to get a drink of water here. And we'll have Sam. Sam just really loves doing the testimonials. Oh, yeah. So I just want to make sure everybody just gives her a loud,
That's my favorite thing ever.
Yeah.
Nothing gives me more joy.
Testimonials with Sam.
All right, this patient said, I would wake up with a headache 4 to 5 times per week for many years. By the second week of taking my nutritional supplements at Divine Design, I had 0 headaches that second week. After just 6 weeks, I've had almost no headaches at all. So, pretty quick.
Oh, yeah, let's do, are we doing memes? Let's make sure. We got to get our laugh in before. That's me outside the grocery store after an hour of reading labels. That's a famous picture. That's hilarious. 90 calories sells a lot better than 30 ingredients. Convincing the world to count calories instead of ingredients is one of the most profitable schemes in all of history. Isn't that great? Does anybody know what is this picture? Very few. That's OJ being chased in the white Bronco. Remember? But this is me just trying to get through 2024. Hurricanes, FEMA, microplastics, pesticides, seed oils, CBDCs, food shortages, censorship, inflation, fluoridated water, World War III, BlackRock, and debt. And that's me. Doctors in Canada researching modern healthcare treatments. People driving these vehicles now refer to them as jab cabs, booster cruisers, or vaxi taxis. Start connecting the dots. People denying weather modification are the same ones that lined up for 8 boosters. Because remember, indoctrinated, medicated, vaccinated, glyphosated, so they're not going to see what's right in front of their face because they're not human anymore. Next. Doctor, please just tell me the truth. I'm sorry, but the medical board will take away my license if I do that. There you have it. 21 predictions. So let's get into this. 21 predictions of Roy Lee, Dr. Roy Lee. Number 1, and at the very end, stick around because at the very end we'll do it might be just a couple of shots, couple of screens of summary. So we'll review all of these at the end and in one summary, in one one-line summaries of all of this stuff. Here it is. So the failure of synthetic or purified vitamins and the antioxidant theory of vitamin function. From the earliest days of vitamin research, this is about 12 pages, so just dig in. Just sit back, just listen. From the earliest days of vitamin research, Dr. Lee asserted that synthetic vitamins function as poorly as synthetic foods. They may have pharmaceutical effects, but not nutritional. Every major long-term study on human beings fed synthetic vitamins and antioxidants has failed to show a conferred benefit. It's quite the reverse. So to the bewilderment of most gray-bearded authorities, significant large-scale studies show a negative relationship to major diseases and synthetic vitamin consumption. Lee accurately predicted that no benefit from these artificial pills would ever be found. He warned and cited evidence that they in fact cause harm. The June 2003 issue of the Lancet, huge medical journal, published this admission after a meta-analysis of a bunch of major studies in recent times involving 220,000 subjects with follow-up periods up to 12 years. So this is a major, major study. The Lancet's published conclusion, far from helping ward off heart disease, the data suggests these various antioxidant pills are harmful and confer no protection. But they point out vitamin-rich foods do confer protection. This is exactly what Dr. Lee stated time and again for over 40 years. Natural whole foods, Lee argued, We're complexes of synergistic components that function together as a mechanism. Vitamins are not chemicals any more than brass, steel, and jewels are a watch. This chemical view of vitamins, Dr. Lee stated, is the chemist's trap, which has left medicine utterly lost on the subject of nutrition. The paradox here is that the medical paradigm believes there's no difference between synthetic vitamins and natural vitamin complexes. Therefore, they believe the studies using synthetic vitamins prove that vitamins provide little to no benefit in supplemental form and are being proved harmful. A stance that Dr. Lee would agree with because he maintained that synthetic vitamins are not vitamins at all. Dr. Lee held the vitamin supplement industry, which produces almost nothing but synthetic vitamins, in the same low regard as he did the processed food industry, as purveyors of ersatz food products, incapable of building health, and in many ways the reverse. What is that saying? Saying not only was artificial synthetic vitamins not only not helping people, but they were harming people. And most of the commercially available store-bought nutraceutical vitamin products are synthetic. So not only it's not helping you, it's actually harming you, as Dr. Lee predicted. Number 2, diabetes and all of its attendant diseases would dramatically increase as refined and synthetic sugars and carbohydrates continued to be consumed. Sound familiar? Going up? Going up. Now remember, this was 2003. That's why I said, keep in mind, some of the stuff might be outdated. I do not know the current statistics on diabetes in the United States, but I guarantee you it's more than 17 million. The current 17 million American adults with the disease is growing by 1 million new cases each year and is the 6th leading cause of death, our good friends at the CDC say. Lee said it would be the fastest increasing disease of civilization if synthetic and refined glucose products continued to be consumed. Diabetes, in fact, is the fastest increasing disease in America, even as today's authorities utterly fail to grasp the cause and the effect of the long-term situation. If they gave serious attention to the writings and lectures of Dr. Lee, their ignorance would evaporate, not to mention the vast sums of money that their fruitless research bleeds from the national treasury. Isn't that wonderfully worded? What is the cause of diabetes? Crappy food. Sugary food. People always, all day long, they'll walk in here and say, my doctors can't figure out my blood sugar. Guess what? Your blood sugar comes from only one thing. What is it? Food. It's not coming from the lotion you put on. It's not coming from the shoes you're wearing, right? But they can't figure this out. Completely ineffective. Have no idea how to figure this out. But in the meantime, while you're waiting for your blood test results, have a Starbucks, right? Medical geneticists who offer an I'm starting here. Number 3, simple, easy, straightforward, right? You're like, this isn't any big deal. Everybody could have predicted this. Now, this was back in the 20s, 30s, 40s. Think about it. Hardly anybody had diabetes back then. Hardly anybody was taking store-bought vitamins. Number 3, degrading of the genetic patterns of the human race through acquired traits from malnutrition pass along to offspring. Lee gave a lot of examples of genetic weaknesses acquired by the progenitor through the use of refined foods. The lesions of malnutrition, isn't that a good way of saying it? The lesions of malnutrition, Lee reported, show up first in the endocrine system. That's a point you might want to make. When you have women with screwed up hormones, you might want to know that. Lesions of malnutrition show up first in the endocrine system, in your hormones. More and more researchers are revealing how a genetically weak link or genetic constitution increases the likelihood of developing specific diseases. Since many of these diseases, like cancer and heart disease, were very rare 100 years ago, clue, our recent forebears must have acquired these defects during a lifetime of nutritional and environmental incompetence. Dr. Weston A. Price, we did a class all about him called Real Life Weston A. Price back in January or February. A friend of Dr. Lee, they were both dentists, by the way, made a worldwide study of photographic catalog of this effect in his 1939 classic book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, still in print after all these years, and there's a copy of it right up front if you want to check it out. Medical geneticists who offer an ever-increasing list of diseases related to defective genes still do not accept Lee's assertion about acquiring traits from malnutrition. Can you believe this? That will be yet another prediction proven to be true. To get it on the record, let's note what he said in 1950. This is Dr. Lee in 1950. Listen to this. The forces of heredity definitely tend to inflict upon unborn children the penalties of poor judgment and carelessness that their mothers and fathers exercised in selecting their food. These penalties accumulate, each generation paying a greater price in lost health. A race that fails to take notice of dietary problems soon dies out. Dr. Weston A. Price found in his travels and studies of primitive peoples that they had accumulated a remarkable folklore of nutritional information passed down from generation to generation. Now we can see that this is not so remarkable. The existence of the people he studies is actually dependent upon that folklore. Those families who fail to accurately transmit this information, to take the trouble to learn the necessary facts of life, dwindled into nothing. We think we're of higher intelligence, but are actually being subjected to that same test. Very interesting. Very interesting. The appalling acceleration of the incidence of cancer and degenerative diseases during the 20th century offers a sobering example of Dr. Lee's forecast about nutrition, malnutrition, and genetics. Genes and germs, Dr. Lee accurately noted, are the judge and jury of nutritional competence. Very well said. So what is all that saying? That's saying, basically, it's like the classes that we did on Francis Pottinger, Pottinger's cats, the classes that we did on Weston A. Price, other classes that we've done, all say basically this. If you don't understand nutrition, you are going to pass down your curse to your offspring. And how long does it take? According to Francis Pottinger, how long does it take? 3 generations of cats to all get sick, arthritic, mental aberrations. Could it be turned around? Yeah, but it was a lot of work and it took a lot of time. Go back and watch those. And that's another reason why I'm kind of reading this and I'm kind of putting it on the screen. I want this to be recorded, videoed for us to share with anybody. Anybody can watch this. You can share this with anybody. Some of these things, more people, certain people need to know more than other certain people. So like that one right there, if you've got anybody in your family that is pregnant or wanting to have kids and they can't, and they're paying tens of thousands of dollars for IVF, guess what? You could save their lives. Number 4, cancer and glucose, cancer and adulterated foods. Remember, this is from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. This is from lectures in the 50s and 60s where Royal Lee had probably been saying this for 30 years. He's already putting it together, cancer and sugar and cancer and adulterated foods. So his lectures and writings issue a severe warning about the link between exogenous glucose, that means from outside the body, and the incidence of cancer. Over 70 years ago, some cancer specialists noted that tumors thrive on sugar, glucose, to fuel their uncontrolled growth. Lee further developed this theme as the use of synthetic sugars like corn syrup, or you and I would call it high fructose corn syrup, which is in everything nowadays, became a staple of processed foods and progressively found its way into the American diet. From soft drinks to peanut butter and from canned fruit to baked goods and baby foods, the addition of corn syrup and glucose in the diet parallels the increase and virulence of this scourge of civilization. In 1998, the fact that cancer cells are sugar junkies was rediscovered by researchers at Johns Hopkins. What? In their lab, cancer cells deprived of glucose died. Their announcement of this rediscovery, buried in a few journals, noted that this new information could lead to the development of drugs that block the entrance of glucose into tumors. Ha! We got it. We get new drugs that will block the sugar from getting into the cell instead of just not eating it. Genius. Why change your diet when you can buy a drug? So this is a perfect example of Dr. Lee's rebuke that drugs were being used to treat the reactions of malnutrition. The massive increase of sugar, refined carbohydrates, and synthetic glucose over the past century has been a feedstock for cancer in the species of man. Lee's prediction in this regard made him a target for the purveyors of these products. I could go on and on and on about what he did against some of these companies. I digress. I want to stick right to this. Though certainly known, cancer was a rare disease in the 19th century. Prior to 1930, lung cancer wasn't even listed in the ICD codes. Dr. Lee described cancer as a disease of civilization introduced into human genetics by the use of adulterated and refined foods, and that cancer rates would continue to increase even as people hoped for and were repeatedly promised that a cure is just around the corner. Remember the war on cancer? Who was it that said that? Who was it that declared the war on cancer? Nobody? Well, Nixon did it once, and then the Bushes, I think it was Baby Bush, that said we'll have an answer to cancer by the end of the decade. I believe it was Nixon that said the war on cancer. We're going to start the war on cancer, and we'll have cancer figured out within 10 years. Did that ever happen? How long ago was Nixon in office? So read that as, we just need more money. Apparently that corner was down an endlessly straight road. He caustically pointed out how cancer research journals described in detail how to feed refined and adulterated food to test animals in order to induce cancer susceptibility before being fed or injected with a carcinogen. A well-nourished test animal, the journals noted, was inconveniently resistant to cancer. As more people are living off cancer than dying from it, a cynic might note that cancer has been a bull market for the medical profession, but a bear market for humanity and the taxpayer. In the U.S. today, 1 in 4 deaths is due to cancer, and that does not include secondary causes of death, like infections that occur when cancer treatments weaken the patient's resistance and they die of complications. Read that as chemotherapy and radiation. The American Cancer Society and the American Medical Association, which for nearly all of the 20th century vigorously condemned anyone who associated cancer with the American diet, finally renounced 1/3 of their position, 100 years later, with no apology to the American people or to those honest doctors who they'd muted. In the UK in 2001, and for the first time ever, cancer overtook heart disease as their leading cause of death in men. Dr. Lee states in these lectures that cancer may be quite difficult to cure in the individual, but it's easy to cure in the race. You might want to write that down. Cancer is easy to cure in the individual, but it's difficult to cure, difficult to cure in the individual, but it's easy to cure in the race. In the whole group, it's very, very easy. Why would it be easy in the group, but hard in the individual? At the very beginning, remember? Indoctrinated, medicated, vaccinated, glyphosated. Overall, you can fix, hey, if we know the water is giving people cancer in Flint, Michigan, we fix the water. Problem solved, right? Everybody's individually different, though. So the individual, it's going to be hard, right? Stop eating. Here's how you do it. It's easy to cure in the race. Stop eating refined, adulterated synthetic foods. And the proper genetic resistance would return within 1 or 2 generations. This result has been observed in a number of multi-generational animal studies, namely the cats of Francis Pottinger, which we did a class on. Everybody get that? Number 5. Here's another prediction. Number 5 prediction by Dr. Roy Lee. Nations consuming devitalized foods would see sperm counts and fertility rates continuously decline. In a January 1952 article, Dr. Lee penned these words: I could write volumes on how synthetic vitamins like thiamine castrate the descendants of the victim who uses even as much as double the daily requirement. Here's what I want you to hear. The bread, the cake, the candy, the pasta, the noodles, all the stuff that contains thiamine, all the synthetic B vitamins, all the cereals, all the donuts, all the bagels, all the waffles, all the pancakes, all the bready stuff, that's one thing. But the biggest thing out there right now that contains thiamine and therefore castrates the descendants of the victims, anybody know what it is? Energy drinks. It's liquid castration. That's what this is. But he doesn't mention that here. I just want you to know that. But the bread, what he's talking about here is bread. But now we have this new thing called energy drinks within the last 5, 10, 15, right? That's what's happening. Monster, all your stuff. So Dr. Lee cited numerous studies as far back as the late 30s. Practically no one listened to him, but of course he was right. In 92, researchers at the University of Copenhagen did a meta-analysis of a bunch of studies and concluded that the sperm count in Western nations had been falling between 1% and 2% per year since the 30s. Disbelief ran amok in the scientific community, and the University of Missouri Columbia overtook an even larger meta-analysis, 101 studies back to the 30s, and reevaluated the 61 studies originally used by the Danes. So the leader of the study said she was determined to disprove the Copenhagen findings. The Missouri team, however, published their findings in '96 in the Journal of the National Institute of Environmental Health Services, part of the NIH, our good friends at the NIH. Their conclusions, overall in Europe and the United States, there's a strong and significant decline in sperm counts and motility. The NIH agreed with the Missouri findings. Instead of disproving it, they agreed with it, stating their analysis of data collected from 38 to 90 indicates that sperm density in the U.S. have exhibited an average annual decrease of 1.5% per year, higher than they thought. So those in European countries have declined at about twice that rate, 3.1%. So thank God for being American, right? The worldwide total, wait. While many blame environmental toxins, they will not even look at synthetic vitamins that by law were added to enriched foods in 1940 and had been consumed well before that. Many of the toxins suspected by the researchers were not even created or widely in the environment until the 50s, and their own research shows the declining trend began well before that. Lee argued that it's not environmental poisons alone that disrupt the endocrines and the reproduction. Nutrient starvation and the artificial and refined substitutes in the food supply are the primary causes of infertility and long-term decline in sperm count and quality. What he means here by the endocrines, all the endocrine organs. So you're talking about your thalamus, your hypothalamus, your pituitary, your pineal gland, your thyroid, your adrenals, your ovaries, or guys. It depends on, it's 2024. Guys, you could have ovaries. Testicles, ovaries, what am I leaving out? I'm leaving all your glands, all of your endocrine glands, all the stuff that makes hormones. That's what that means. So the worldwide fertility rate, total fertility rate, is now estimated to be half of what it was in 1965. For more on that, you can see our class on the eugenics agendas, where we go through all of the reasons for the depopulation. The refining of grains and the use of synthetic fats has removed hormone precursors from the diet, like natural vitamin E complex, originally discovered in wheat germ oil, which we use extensively here. These fats and their fat-soluble vitamins are fertility factors, and the fat-phobic world of medicine and modern culture has resulted in the growing infertility of the race. Dr. Lee's theories anticipated this 60 years ago. So, decreasing sperm count. He said it 60 years ago, and this was 21 years ago, so 80 years ago. Number 6, iatrogenic disease as a major cause of death. Iatrogenic just means caused by a doctor. It's a big word for caused by a doctor. He predicted this long ago. 106,000 U.S. deaths per year from non-error adverse reactions to drugs, or you'll hear them referred to as drug adverse events. Treating people with poisons to correct the reactions of starvation, Lee warned, would increasingly become a significant cause of death in and of itself. The death toll from non-error prescribed drugs is now the 5th leading cause of death in the U.S. And shortly after this, I'll finish this. Dr. Lee called the use of drugs over nutrition in treating human disease as one of the biggest tragedies of human civilization. Barbara Starfield did a report back in, I want to say it was 2001, 2, 3, somewhere in there. It was early 2000s. And she published and said those exact statistics and said that the 3rd leading cause of death, and it's been 3rd leading cause of death ever since, is is prescriptions, is drugs. It's the medical field, doctors, iatrogenic. So he predicted that long ago. Barbara Starfield proved it. Number 8, it's called the Starfield Report, if you ever want to look it up. Number 7, heart disease. This is Dr. Lee. Rare, 100 years ago, unknown in regions of the world living on a better food pattern, but it's a leading cause of death in the U.S. and has been for almost 80 years. Lee said it would increase as long as devitaminized foods lacking the B vitamins, natural vitamin E complex, and other essential nutrients were deficient in the diet. He called sudden death from heart attack American beriberi. Maybe I'll talk about that in a minute. And the synthetic enriching of bleached flour and polished rice, a colossal fraud. The refining of grains and their improper handling and storage, along with synthetic fats, was the largest shovel that Americans used to dig their own graves. Back up just a little bit on that, Jonathan, because I'll just tell you a little bit about this. American beriberi. Does anybody know what beriberi is? Beriberi. It's Yeah, well, that's part of it. Yeah, beriberi is, I forget which language it is. It's either Senegalese or Tagalog, Polynesia, somewhere in one of the Polynesian islands, I want to say. The word beriberi means I can't. So it's like paralysis, it's dementia, it's dermatitis, it's death. Like some of the things you experience when somebody has a B vitamin deficiency, all those things. It's called sudden death from a heart attack. Dr. Lee called it American beriberi. I can't. And it was because of the vitamin B, vitamin E, all the stuff that's taken out of food that is no longer there anymore, and their heart just shuts down. That's it. Number 8, coronary occlusions, arteriosclerosis, and cholesterol diseases. How does that sound? Does that sound like half your relatives? Right? There would be an increase due to the intake of synthetic fats and oils aggravated by vitamin complex deficiencies. Nowadays, you're hearing this in the collective consciousness as seed oils. You're hearing everybody talk about seed oils. Ever since the invention of oleomargarine in 1870, synthetic fats have increasingly replaced the natural fats in the diet of Western nations. Lacking basic fat metabolizers, such as lecithin, these vitamin-void substitutes known as trans fats or hydrogenated oils were a constant target of Dr. Lee. He predicted that they'd be proven to be a major cause of high cholesterol, arteriosclerosis, and occlusive disease. These predictions came during the early days when dietitians and medical doctors began advising patients to eat oleomargarine and to stay away from butter. The loss of fat-soluble vitamins like E, A, and F, I know you probably haven't heard of vitamin F, but E, A, and F, caused by switching to the cheap butter imitations, Lee warned, would lead to major decline in the hearts, eyes, and muscles of the race. All these warnings have come to pass. How long ago he made this prediction is worth noting, but hold right there for a minute. Lee warned that all of these things, not eating good fats, would lead to a major decline in the hearts, eyes, and muscles of the race. Stop right there for a minute. Hearts. What's happening to people's hearts? Well, heart disease is still the #1 killer. Why? Nobody's eating good fat. They're staying away from the government and the media told you to stay away from animal products and eggs and raw milk. All the stuff God made, stay away from that. And at the same time, take a cholesterol drug, right? What about the eyes? Here's a good little experiment. Go to your yearbook. Count the number of kids in your class that had glasses. Now go to your kids' yearbook or your kids' yearbook. Go to your grandkids' yearbook and count the number of kids in their class that have glasses. And then the muscles of the race. What's happening to the muscles of little boys nowadays? Well, what's happening to the muscles of the old people, right? They're taking cholesterol drugs. They're not eating good fats. Their muscles are falling apart. They're hurting themselves, right? One of the biggest side effects of a cholesterol drug is muscle pain. So all these warnings have come to pass. How long ago he made this prediction is worth noting. Let's go on down. In 1959, a West German book by Albert von Haller, The Vitamin Hunters, was translated and published in 1962. It's an excellent volume of history of deficiency disease and the discovery of vitamins. The author cited some of Lee's research in the area of synthetic fats. Here's a German guy talking in 1959 about Royal Lee. Two Americans, Royal Lee and Jerome Stelzoff, in 1942 made a study of all the attempts to substitute artificial fat for butter and collected proofs from their experiments showing that the natural product cannot be equaled. The story of butter is not an exception in the history of nutrition, is their conclusion. It is the oft-repeated story of an artificial product which cannot take the place of a natural one. This story will go on until man, listen to this, I love this. This story will go on until man will have learned to master the secrets of the works of nature down to its most hidden details, or, number 2, until the public becomes convinced that food in its natural state is undeniably superior. I love that. I love the way that's worded. Number 9, what did he predict about arthritis and osteoporosis? I'm so glad you asked. We did a class on this. We did a bunch of dental stuff. We talked about why there are so many pediatric dentistry offices popping up. Here it is. Arthritis and osteoporosis, what did he say? He called arthritis and degenerative bone syndromes cooked food diseases, in which the heat labile or heat sensitive essential amino acids increasingly become extinct in the prevailing diet. One key food in which amino acids and collagen-building vitamins are destroyed? Pasteurized milk. The main one. Additionally, 50 years before it was accepted as such, Dr. Lee described RA, rheumatoid arthritis, as an autoimmune disease in which the host's own immune system developed ravaging antibodies against the collagen connective tissue of the joints. At that time, it was considered a bacterial disease, RA. And then a little while later, 20 years later, it was considered a viral one. They went from, it's bacteria, to no, it's viral, to, oh yeah, it's autoimmune. Today, RA is finally accepted as an AI disease. Lee, first to recognize the autoallergen aspect of the disease, said this reaction was secondary to the lesions of malnutrition. As you'll hear in the recordings that these liner notes accompany, bone is 1/3 mineral, 1/3 protein, 1/3 water. That's a little factoid for you. Bone. You want to know how to rebuild bone? Right there it is. Mineral, protein, water. Third. It was the important heat labile or heat-sensitive essential amino acids that were missing in the diet of arthritics in the years preceding their disability. Mineral deficiency, Lee said, was secondary in importance to the development of arthritis. Mineral deficiency was secondary in importance to the development of arthritis. The most recent data from our great friends at the Centers for Disease Creation in 2002 puts the number of American adults with arthritis and chronic painful joint symptoms at a staggering 70 million. That was 20 years ago. I'll bet that's double, making it the most debilitating condition in the country. Dr. Lee well knew that arthritis was unknown in parts of the world where protein foods like milk were not ritually destroyed by overcooking. He knew that. He knew well that arthritis you didn't have in other places where the milk is not cooked. He knew that arthritis would keep on crippling modern nations until they stopped pasteurizing their milk and cooking their proteins to death. Regarding osteoporosis, Dr. Lee pointed to the destruction of the raw milk enzyme phosphatase, which is also destroyed in pasteurization, leading to the impairment of calcium bonding to the bones. Modern medicine's nowhere close to a cure for arthritis because they're nowhere close to understanding the cause. The cause passes unnoticed through their own mouths. That'll cheer you up, won't it? Okay. Number 10, dental and periodontal disease would increase with the devitalized diet. The decay of the oral cavity is the cousin of arthritis and osteoporosis. But since it's treated by a specialist of the mouth, the dentist, they're viewed as separate conditions. Dr. Lee was a Marquette Dental School graduate in 1923, and he was not limited by such blinders and called periodontal and dental disease arthritis of the mouth and tooth socket. Even in his speech to the senior class in 1923, entitled The Systemic Causes of Dental Caries, which I have a copy of his paper, his speech, Lee fought for the recognition of dental disease as one of malnutrition. Because fluoride is a non-nutritional elemental mineral, he called it another example of using drugs to fight deficiency. He termed the practice mass medication. Fluoride. Back then. 100 years ago, right? When he was a dentist. Unbelievable. Because water was being doped with a non-nutritional substance. Called it mass medication. The Lee Foundation for Nutritional Research provided much literature for the public on this matter. Today, many dentists have awakened to the fact that dental disease begins in the diet, but they have a long way to go. So dental and periodontal disease. There you go. Break time. You ready? Everybody give Sam a warm round of applause for her favorite activity, testimonials.
All right, this patient said, I came in with a sinus infection, an earache, a sore throat, and I had no energy. Within hours of my appointment of PEMF and some immune system boosting supplements, I had much more energy. Within just 24 hours, I was completely symptom-free with zero fatigue. So even faster than the last one.
Yeah, so it's interesting when you put the right stuff in someone's blood and then you direct the blood to where the problem is, you flush out the bad and bring in the good. That's about how simple it is. It's really simple. Memes? Yes. 21 predictions of Dr. Royal Lee. Oh yeah, the doctor says, tomorrow you can visit your family whenever you want. The patient says, but my family's dead. Doctor says, I know. Why did Noah build an ark when he could have simply paid more taxes to stop the climate change? Just a reminder that the earth doesn't have a cow farting problem. It has a greedy, psychopathic oligarchy trying to control the food supply problem. Yes. When the government gives a relief check paid for by inflation, then an inflation check paid for by inflation, then gives a, well, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, why is it not working? Why I pushed the button, it's not working? Funny. When you look at a vaccine through a microscope, Skynet. Are we doing like offensive memes? As much offensive meme as we can? No? Okay. Brace yourself, a flu season is coming. It's time for everyone to complain about getting the flu after getting the flu shot. Why are doctors silent? Because it pays so much to inject and costs so much to object. Spoken by a medical doctor. All right, number 11. We are halfway through this list. We're almost done. We'll be out of here by 7:30. Dr. Lee warned about the carcinogenic and other effects of dangerous preservatives, additives, sundry chemicals, and their ubiquitous, meaning everywhere, use to cover up improperly stored and handled foods. He referred to it as the poisoning campaign that began in the first decade of the 20th century. Nitrates added to food, he warned, were as dangerous as nitrate infiltration in the drinking wells on farms using ammonium nitrate fertilizer. He attributed many cancers of farmers, and particularly their children, to this practice. He didn't object to its use in making solid rocket fuel and explosives, just to feeding it to plants. See the difference? He argued if you added a chemical to a food that was strong enough to kill a fungus, how safe was such a chemical in the diet? The vitamins and minerals, this is Dr. Lee, lost by refining, lost by soil depletion, lost by cooking and processing are part of the story. But most of us fail to realize that the addition of chemicals used as preservatives are very common as health destroyers. That was 1951, he said. Also, chlorine compound flour bleaches, Lee cited, caused a phytochemical. When you see this word, just think chemical that comes from a plant. Caused a phytochemical associated with vitamin E, xanthine, to convert into aloxan. Aloxan, he noted, was the most dependable toxin known to kill the islets of Langerhans. Islets of Langerhans are, just think of that as part of your pancreas. So it's routinely used today to induce, listen to this, the chlorine compound flour bleaches, listen to this, it's routinely used today to induce diabetes in research animals. In a 1957 lecture, he stated, flour has been bleached now for over 50 years. But this fact of the possible conversion of xanthine to aloxan is very new to most of us. It was reported, however, in Thorpe's Dictionary of Chemistry as far back as 1918. But the diabetogenic nature of aloxan was not discovered until 1943. So they'd been doing that for almost 50 years when they figured it out. So you're often told of how Dr. Harvey Wiley, the first head of the FDA, which used to be called the Food and Drug Administration, used to just be straight chemistry. Strange, right? How'd it go from chemistry to food and drugs? Interesting. He made it a holy mission. Harvey Wiley was a good guy to get all of these chemicals out of the food supply and to ban the practice of bleaching flour. So when you're talking about bleaching flour, think about all the white stuff, the white bagels, the white bread, the bleaching, all the white stuff, all the noodles, all the white people. You got to get rid of all the white people. Racist. So unfortunately, that was also the chief reason that he got fired in 1912. Dr. Lee was correct that if the American people learned the truth about these additives in the food supply, they'd rise up. Today, the words no preservatives and no additives are often the most prominent words displayed on the actual food label. Few people did more than Lee to bring this awareness to the American public. Number 12, epidemic viral diseases would periodically run rampant, and drug-resistant bacterial infection would overwhelm medicine's ability to react. He predicted this long ago, that you would have resistant bugs to antibiotics. Nutritional status of an individual or of an entire region of people determines the readiness of the immune system to deal with pathogenic microorganisms. So think bacteria. In fact, nutritionally compromised immune systems spread over an entire region form a human greenhouse for growing virulent pathogenic germs, Lee stated. He used the First World War, in which he served, The guy did a lot. He served in World War I. To illustrate how widespread nutritional deficiency caused by severe disruption of global fresh food supplies led to the most virulent wildfire epidemic in all of history, the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918, which it wasn't a viral thing, right? We'll talk about that later. In 9 months, it claimed the lives of an estimated 40 million people worldwide. For perspective, an equal percentage of today's population would be 100 million. The medical consensus of Lee's, so that was in 9 months, 40 million people. What happened with the COVIDs 3 years ago, 4 years ago? People weren't dropping dead at work or at home. They actually didn't start dying until 2021. Weird. So the medical consensus of Lee's era, and to a lesser degree today, was that nutritional status had no immunological impact on resistance to infection. The medical consensus basically was saying that food has nothing to do with your immune status. Think about that. To those with knowledge of nutrition and biochemistry, does this even sound believable? At the end of this booklet is a brief article by Dr. Lee from 1950 in which he quotes an official of the Food and Drug Administration, Division of Nutrition, who stated in court that nutritional status had no effect on resistance or functional change in any infection or disease. I have the paperwork. It's right there in black and white. He says there is absolutely no proof, there is no evidence that food changes someone's susceptibility to a disease. And that's what's ruled medicine for 100 years. It's crazy. All right, I should say 80 years. In a related prediction contained in these lectures, Dr. Lee warned of the inevitable mutation of pathogens spurred by the widespread use of antibiotics. How did he know this, right? It's now common knowledge that this has come to pass. He foretold how germs would become ever more virulent and stay ahead of the new drugs because nature never ceases to accomplish the mission of germs, which is to attack unhealthy tissue. So that's why when people say, oh, I've got an infection, I say, great, perfect. Something's happening. Your body has to get rid of some stuff. Unless it gets to a bad level, and then, if it's somebody that, if they get to a point where they have to go to an emergency room or something like that, which doesn't happen here, but if living in the real world, like normal people who don't come here, then yeah, they're going to go to the emergency room. They're going to get an antibiotic. What's that going to do? Start the whole process. It's going to, now you see, right? Nature never ceases to accomplish the mission of germs. This is a very important point, which is to attack unhealthy tissue. They're just doing their job, right? Why are you trying to kill everything? Let them do their job. Lee was interested in helping people achieve the goal of healthy tissues, not using drugs to mislead people into thinking they were fine. Very well said. Number 13. This is the big one. Notice it's in all caps. I want you to get this. Here's perhaps his most startling discovery and certainly the most far-sighted forecast of Lee's theories. Inspired by the work of the pioneers in endocrinology and their development of the field they called organotherapy, Lee sought the active principle of their success with organ extracts. You who are patients would know these as PMG products, PMGs. In 1946, he published his book, Protomorphology, which was the first down payment on his theory of autoallergy. This is where he predicted autoimmunity. Ready? I'll try to sum this up. Lee correctly foretold how the starvation of the organs led to lesions, resulting in allergic reactions to the host's own tissues. Though virtually unrecognized by contemporaries of Lee, it was a major theme in his lectures. In these recordings, to the liner notes that are included with the liner notes, you'll repeatedly hear him explain his theory. Here's a thumbnail description. Take note of this. Here's the thumbnail description of autoantibody or autoimmunity. As organ lesions and necrotic or dead spots in the organ lead to premature death of cells, their genetically marked proteins leak into the blood in abundance. Genetically marked proteins. So you're talking about nucleic acids, talking about the building blocks, the blueprints of those cells. In other words, your heart organ starts to break down. It's got a problem. It's got a malfunction. It's got some tissue that's necrotic. Those cells are going to be destroyed, and your DNA of those heart cells is going to leak into your blood. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? How much DNA does your blood want in it? None, right? Your body is supposed to digest all that stuff before it gets into your blood. So keep with me here. So an organ lesions and necrotic spots lead to premature death of cells, and their genetically marked proteins, the DNA, leak into the blood in abundance. The presence of those proteins, those nucleic acids in the blood, elicit the creation of antibodies by the immune system targeting those identified proteins. So because these same proteins exist in the host organ, the antibodies do more than attack the proteins in the blood, they attack the source organ as well. So this leads to inflammation in the organ, which in turn leads to more premature cell death and more genetically marked proteins escaping into the blood. And the cycle of autoallergy intensifies. Lee recognized that this was the elusive principle behind the success of the organotherapy products, or the extracts, although these pioneering endocrinologists never discovered this principle. In other words, he's saying, in order to get the body to forget about attacking the heart, let's say, in this example, why don't we introduce oral tolerance therapy or oral protomorphogen therapy to the gut so that then the antibodies will go towards here and away from the heart, giving the heart time to heal. That's how it works. Dr. Lee developed a class of organ extracts to combat these antibodies. At the same time, Lee taught nutrients need to be provided to the sick organ to stop the premature death of its cells. In reviewing his book, here goes, Protomorphology in 1948, the Journal of the American Medical Association mocked Dr. Lee's theory, writing, "The reviewer fails to find justification for the book or for the experimental pursuit of the specific hypotheses proposed therein." My thing would be like, okay, you got a better idea? Today, an internet search on Google for autoimmune disease brings up in less than half a second 455,000 hits. Remember, this was written in 21 years ago. So if you Googled autoimmune disease, somebody do that on their phone, just real quick. We've all got computers in our pockets now. Tell me in a second just Google autoimmune diseases and just see how many results Google has. I'll come right back to you. In Dr. Lee's day and until the last decade of the 20th century, most doctors had never heard of the autoimmune phenomenon. Steroid drugs like synthetic cortisone, adrenal hormone, AKA, are routinely used today in a feeble effort to slow the autoantibody reaction, which Lee termed natural tissue antibodies. This treatment creates a new set of problems for the patient and merely slows the progression of the condition. In these recordings, you'll hear Dr. Lee explain his successful approach to help the body deal with natural reaction to the starvation and breakdown of organs. So fundamental a process is the autoimmune reaction that Lee stressed this observation. At some point in any prolonged disease, this is a point you might want to take down. At some point in any prolonged disease process, there ultimately occurs enough tissue degeneration that it escalates into an autoimmune process. So it's not so much that there are so many autoimmune processes, so many autoimmune diseases, it's the fact that so many diseases turn into autoimmune problems. How many?
I don't know what comes up with that.
No, just results. I just want to see how many results. I don't know. This is different. Can you just have Nadia Google? You got your radio? I don't know it looks different on your phone. It looks different. Just Google and see how many results, autoimmune conditions, or it might just be on the desktop version that you can see that. I don't know. It might not do it on your phone. You don't have it? Run out there, Sam, and see what kind of number. So we went from 400. Just have Nadia Google Google autoimmune diseases and tell us how many results Google has. So remember, back 20 years ago, 455,000 hits on autoimmune disease. Let me know when she gets back. Number 14, here's a huge one right here. The role of ionizable calcium in the blood, Dr. Lee stated, is indispensable to the resistance to and fighting of viral and bacterial infections. I'll give you one definition here. When we use the term, well, it's not here yet, phagocytic means your white blood cells are going after pathogens and destroying them. So when you see that word. So this is a constant theme stressed in these lectures, that calcium is the most abundant mineral in the body and the only mineral to have its own dedicated endocrine gland for its regulation. It's the parathyroid on the back of your thyroid. She's looking? Okay, just let me know. Raise your hand when you got it. Almost all medical attention towards this mineral is focused on bone. In his day and continuing to the present, only minor attention is paid to the critical role that soluble calcium plays in the all-important immune function of, there it is, phagocytosis. Phagocytosis means cellular eating, so eating of the cells. right? The cells, the white blood cells, eat the bad cells. Lee stressed the role of calcium in responding to and preventing infection, and repeatedly reported how ionized blood calcium stimulated the eating of cells, phagocytosis. When you hear somebody that has an immune problem, what do they normally think of taking? What vitamin goes with when you're sick? To most people. Vitamin what? C. Vitamin C. Should it be vitamin C or should it be calcium? So yes. So Lee stressed the role of calcium in responding to and preventing infection, and repeatedly reported how ionized blood calcium stimulated immunity, or phagocytosis. The white blood cells see a bacteria and they eat it up. That's what that is. Together with natural vitamin C complex, there it is, that's where we were going. Lee felt that these two nutrients were the key synergists in the process of killing pathogens and preventing virus from gaining a firm foothold in the body. On the farm, yes. 200 million. 200 million? 230. So my point, 21 years ago, the Google results for autoimmune conditions, autoimmune disease, was 455,000. Now, 21 years later, it's 230 million. Yep. They're everywhere. 20 years later. Wow. Yep. That's why I pointed out at the very beginning. Remember, this document that we're looking at is 21 years old. So, on the farm, Dr. Lee observed the role of calcium in the soil to the defense of plants. How many doctors then are now bothered to evaluate and elevate ionized blood calcium levels in critically ill patients? Practically none. But those who bothered to investigate found startling information. As reported in the American Journal of Medicine, in February of 1988, the level of ionized calcium in the blood was the key predictor of outcome for acutely ill patients admitted to a medical intensive care setting. The lower the blood calcium, the worse the prognosis, was the conclusion. There was a strong association between sepsis and hypocalcemia. Sepsis, blood infection, and hypocalcemia, low calcium. The journal reported. During the study of 88 acutely ill patients admitted to the hospital, 70% had low blood calcium and had the worst outcomes, death, by a statistically significant 62% margin. What's that saying? Ionizable calcium, meaning calcium that can easily break down in the digestive tract and be assimilated out of the digestive tract into the blood and then get assimilated from the blood into the tissues, because it doesn't do anything, it just floats around in your blood. The ionizable calcium has a direct relationship to your ability to fight off infections. That's what that's saying, basically. Today's research journals are filled with information on calcium and infection that has not trickled down to the textbooks or medical practice. In scores of medical research reports, phagocytosis is now referred to as a calcium-dependent phenomenon. The calcium wave, as it's called, rushing towards the phagocytic players, has been captured by high-speed photographic techniques that allow researchers to actually see how calcium rushes to stimulate and empower the process of pathogen destruction. This has been reported in research about tuberculosis and other life-threatening infections. The fact that activated macrophages, think of white blood cells, showed a more dramatic response suggested that calcium spikes during phagocytosis mediate or regulate biochemical mechanisms for microbicidal activities. Lee warned that the modern diet was a perfect design to block calcium assimilation and prevent its ionization in the blood. The pasteurization, there it is again, of all dairy products, the use of fake sugar, such as corn syrup, and the consumption of refined carbohydrates, the softening of drinking water, boom. People are still softening their drinking water. All contribute mightily to the impairment of calcium utilization. So in addition to the role of calcium in teeth and bone, Lee was way ahead of accepted science when he urged the use of soluble forms of calcium. For instance, calcium lactate or calcium citrate. What's most of the calcium that you buy in the store? Calcium carbonate or calcium bicarbonate. It's calcium carbonate. It's stones. It's rocks. It's ground up sand. It's basically what it is. Of course, he went further than what is even known or accepted, including the role of vitamin F in the ionizing of blood calcium. So vitamin F, think of fatty acids, essential fatty acids. Number 15, we're almost done. How many do we have? 21. We're at 15. Number 15. This is a great one. How would he have possibly? He just knew. Increased crop loss to insects and soil depletion. Born and raised on a fertile Wisconsin farm, purchased by his Norwegian grandfather in 1845, Royal Lee was imbued with respect for the land and the natural cycles of farming, animal husbandry, and land stewardship. He lived through the national transition of age-old organic practices to chemically based agriculture. As artificial manure and pesticides became the modern way, Lee predicted increased crop loss to insects and the decline of soil fertility due to the drugging fraternity's takeover in agriculture. I love drugging fraternity. Crop loss from insects has more than doubled in the last half century. That's our good friends at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Even as chemosterilant use has increased 1,000-fold. As with the use of antibiotics against germs, Lee predicted, insects would mutate with new immunity and their natural competitors would be killed off. This has indeed occurred. The natural resistance of the growing plant is acquired from the soil. Chemical agriculture uses drugs to treat the effects of soil deficiency, same way we do in humans, right? Thus, weak crops survive and pass their deficient status up the food chain. The modern farmer treats the plant, the true farmer treats the soil. Good point. I would write that down. As for insects, today we see that in regions of the world, malaria-bearing mosquitoes have developed complete immunity to even the icon of toxins, DDT. How do you know that? Crazy. Oh, speaking of crazy, look at number 16. Mental illness and dementia. Predictable outcomes, Lee said. In a population raised on white flour, refined carbohydrates, hydrogenated fats and oils, synthetic vitamins, and fluoridated water. There it is, the trifecta. Diet and the mind are inexorably linked, Lee taught, contributing to Lee's confidence in the mental decline of the human race due to diet was his awareness that this outcome had been seen repeatedly in animal experiments from 1917 through the 40s. Always the same pattern, deficient diets led to deviant and insane behavior in animal colonies ranging from mice to cats and dogs to monkeys. Whether from a low-protein diet or a vitamin and mineral deficient diet, the outcome of dementia was the same. Lee pointed out that it was utter nonsense to think that dementia was in any way a normal pattern of old age. It's the countdown of starvation reaching the brain. How many people say, oh, you're just getting older? Oh, you just start forgetting stuff. No, it's not. How did he say that? Go up again. Utter nonsense to think dementia is in any way a normal pattern of old age. It's a countdown of starvation reaching the brain. I love that. Numerous studies reported in medical journals within the last 5 years show that vitamin C, E, and B from food only do confer protection to brain and mental function, but that taking synthetic supplements of these vitamins confers no protection. Peer-reviewed journals today are flooded with such reports of research on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Have you heard of those? Dementia, the epidemic that's going on in the old folks. This is just as Lee stated about the failure of artificial food factors to act as real food. It's nuts. He saw it all. Number 17, we're almost done. He was confident there would be a huge increase in the drugless healing professions and the embrace of nutritional therapeutics and healing. In his day, anyone outside the medical profession was branded a quack, and the projections of the time were that pharmaceutical medicine would be so successful by the end of the millennium that the quacks would die out and not be replaced. But as Lee predicted, this would not be the fate of the natural health professionals. The November 11th, 98 issue of the Journal of the American Medical Association reported that 42% of the population used at least one alternative therapy, alternative to medicine. I hate that term. I hate that term. In the previous year. To their further consternation, among the most educated citizenry, college degree, that number swelled to over half. So the smarter people are, the more they're trying to get away from medicine. An ever-increasing percent of healthcare dollars are being directed towards doctors using nutritional therapeutics. This rate of growth is made more significant because most visits to alternative therapists are not covered by insurance. Voting with your own dollars are the sincerest votes cast. So whilst conventional medicine still dominates the current approach to healthcare, there are many signs that what is today called alternative healthcare is gaining increased respect through patient and consumer demand. Number 18, America is the best fed nation on earth. How many of you ever heard that growing up? No? It was everywhere. Was the mantra of the post-World War II generation. I've seen it in books. Home economics classes in schools and dietitians and institutions echoed this bromide emanating from government agencies. Poison. Americans believed this, even as the Lee Foundation for Nutritional Research offered hundreds of tracts explaining that this propaganda was demonstrably false. Lee never confused quantity for quality or calories for nutrients. He contrasted the so-called Western diet to many cultures, particularly indigenous ones, which had no tooth decay, no cancer, no heart disease, no ulcers, no arthritis. He contrasted the civilizations that either kept to or strayed from traditional dietary patterns. A 1999 report by the Trends Research Institute stated on an individual and on a mass scale, Americans feel they don't get the nutrition they need out of the food they eat. 50 years later, Lee's message is being heard. In 2003, it's estimated 70% of Americans take some dietary supplement every day. Lee predicted that the American public would eventually wake up to the fact, as he put it, that they are digging their graves with their own teeth. He created a mantra of his own declaring, the whiter the bread, the sooner you're dead. That's going back to that bleached, fluoride, chemical containing, the white stuff. 19, phytochemical, just think of that being chemicals from plants. Phytochemicals, he said phytochemicals were going to be ignored or completely unknown by food scientists for most of the 20th century. They'll ignore it. They'll be too busy in their laboratories cooking up other crap to notice what's already in nature. Lee knew of them and repeatedly referred to them collectively in foods as unidentified organic matter that cooperate with nutrients. In a 1946 lecture, Dr. Lee stated, when any foods obtained from living material, plant or animal, and used in its unrefined state, the presence of the various synergists, whether vitamin, mineral, or unidentified non-nutritive accessory factor, is more or less inevitable. In other words, he's saying there's going to be a lot of stuff we find in the future that we can't yet identify. That's very important to making the food run the human, basically. An example are the two carotenoids, lutein and zeaxanthin, found in kale and other cruciferous vegetables, which form part of the macula of the eye and help protect against macular degeneration. Take that, carnivores. In November of 1944, he wrote, the favorable results obtained with whole food concentrates are no doubt due to the presence of some of the as yet unidentified factors in the natural complex. He's saying there's no way we're going to know everything. But eventually in the future, we're going to find some of this stuff being vital. But there's no way we're going to be able to identify all of it. Today, phytochemical research is one of the most intense areas of nutritional study. Lee anticipated these phytochemical discoveries 70 years ago. Number 20, we're almost done. He was confident in his prediction that people would learn by woeful experience that a low-fat, no-fat synthetic fats diet, you'd call that AKA oleo or hydrogenated, would be a major contributor to the appalling state of human health, ranging from endocrine to liver to heart disease. Lee repeatedly taught that healthy fats from both animal and vegetable sources, take that carnivores, delivered everything from vitamins to fatty acids, without which the human and animal body could not build hormones or sustain health. It was, he said, the chemist's solution to artificially prevent the process of oil perishability that led to the refinement of grains and oils. In other words, the chemist's solution to prevent the rotting of oil that eventually led to all of the refinement of the grains and the oils. You got to keep it on the shelf longer. You got to keep it from going bad. That's where it all came from. Lee said the deadly consequences of this, as seen in cancer and heart disease, hasten the death of millions of people every year. The evidence that he was right has crossed the threshold of overwhelming. All the women didn't start having, you never heard of hot flashes until people started eating a bunch of sugar and not eating any fat. It's a brand new thing. Number 21, Lee predicted that the public would become, this is the last one. Lee predicted the public would become much better educated on the matter of food, and that this would translate into a strong consumer demand for what he called organically grown whole foods. Remember, this was 21 years ago that this was written, but this was based on stuff from the 50s. Organically grown whole foods. Where do you hear the term whole foods nowadays? Whole foods. Where do you hear the term whole foods? Anybody? What?
The grocery store.
The grocery store. It's called Whole Foods. Where did that name come from? Royal Lee. Whole Foods. Nobody'd really used that term before. What else did you have? You only had Whole Foods.
No, we had half foods.
Right? Well, but back then, before they started chopping and dicing and slicing everything up, Whole Foods was the only thing you had. That was it. So he came to realize that in time, the public would grasp the importance of the foods that were mocked, belittled, and criticized by the so-called health authorities and government agencies. He strongly believed in a free market and encouraged many entrepreneurs to start health food stores. Health food stores. Brand new invention, right? So the health food stores, what was the other type of food store? If this is a health food store, what type of food does this store sell, right? Through the Lee Foundation for Nutritional Research, he provided some of the first tracts ever written on the differences between whole foods and their adulterated imposters, which he labeled as counterfeit foods. This information helped stimulate the consumer-driven organic foods movement. What? The organic foods movement. He started the peak line of health food store items because the fledgling stores could not obtain many food products in their whole unrefined state. Uncooked and non-hydrogenated organic peanut butter, unpasteurized Tupelo honey, organically grown wheat berries, and unrefined oils were among the items that Dr. Lee made available to the young industry. He enjoyed the irony that this movement would put the moniker health in front of the word food. After all, so many common words have been hijacked by the medical world. So, in its infancy, the people in this movement, viewed as faddists and naive dupes who overpaid for food, found a strong ally in Dr. Lee. Besides operating large organic farms for his own food supplement business, which provided concentrates to doctors, he spoke without fees at many of their early health food conferences throughout the country. That's where most of these recordings came from. At those early conferences in the 50s, he offered attendees some strong scientific facts to support their cause. On these CDs, you're going to hear Lee speaking at some of these early conferences. Even heard today, they are profound. His efforts were not in vain. Finally, in 2002, even the USDA issued organic food standards to draw a bright line between commercially and organically grown vegetable and animal foods. There's a hot debate currently raging over proposed warning labels on all products containing hydrogenated fats. Fast forward a little bit, there was a battle raging on, do we have to label genetically modified foods or not? See how much worse it got in the last 20 years? Back then they were talking about, should we label it if it has hydrogenated fats? Now we're fighting over the idea, should we label it if it was created in a laboratory by splicing bacteria together with a plant? It's unbelievable. The FDA finally, though, over 70 years after Dr. Lee urged such a law, is favoring mandatory warnings. The federal agency is soon to require labels to list the exact level of this synthetic fat so it can't hide under the general heading of fat. However, the food industry is vigorously opposing warning labels for hydrogenated fats. Gee, I wonder why. I'm so surprised. So, here are 21 predictions, all found in these recordings that have come to pass. Who would argue? There were probably many more. But who would argue that Lee's philosophy and theories were wrong? But alas, as Shakespeare wrote, here lies the rub. With all of Lee's predictions right on target, his organized facts so predictive of outcomes, it is painfully obvious that the most influential organizations in the world will not admit that his philosophy and theories are correct. Does that reveal more about the Lee principles or about the establishment that denies his thesis? Lee apparently has won many battles on the issues he raised, but not the war. It takes a holistic view to see how all of his evidence fits together into an overarching paradigm of health and disease. A holistic view that has never emerged in this specialized reductionism of modern medicine in which each part of the body comes under the domain of an elite group of specialists. The sum is greater than the whole of its parts. But this law of synergy is squeezed from the specialist's view. Nevertheless, facts are stubborn things. Find new ways to confound those who deny them, right? So, what about the many other predictions of Dr. Lee found in these recordings? Well, not all have come to pass yet, accepted by those Lee called the Longbeards. Apparently, the passing of generations is not enough. The pharmacomedical cartel has placed profit and faith in chemistry and drugs above a long, hard look at the facts, the statistics, and the implications of the cause and effect identified and linked by Roy Lee. So entrenched and enriched by the status quo that nothing that threatens its cartelistic, like a cartel, I love that, existence will ever be honestly confronted in a debate on merit alone. Only the free choice of the public, not the authorities themselves, will change the direction of healthcare and prevention. This, too, as Lee predicted, is happening. I believe if Dr. Lee were alive today to edit these lectures he delivered about a half century ago, and he was fully informed of all the nutritional knowledge subsequently gained, he would not find it necessary to strike out or change one uttered word or theory proffered in these lectures. In fact, he would have overwhelming new evidence to support his case on all fronts. So, a very, very well-written document. So once again, a big thank you to Mark Anderson of Saline River Press. He wrote that 21 years ago. And how many other predictions that are probably contained in those recordings have probably already come true or would. Unbelievable. Last thing I'll show you right here. We're almost done. Summary of the 21 predictions. So if you want to take some pictures of these, oh, actually, no. Let's do commercial break, last commercial break. Yes. And then I'll show you the summary. You can take some pictures. You're out of here. Sam, go ahead.
All right. This patient said, my 9-year-old lab was starting to have trouble walking as well as chronic ear infections. After 21 days of supplement, she is running around the yard like she used to as a puppy. Her ears also look clear and there's no redness whatsoever. So, yeah. So we treat dogs and humans. Pretty cool.
Take that, veterinarians. Let's laugh. These 11 companies control 70% of the processed food that we eat. All the processed food. You go to a grocery store, all of that. I hear this every day. But I ate that growing up, and I turned out fine. The food you ate as a kid is not exactly the same food your kids are consuming today. And everything we talked about. 1983, aspartame was allowed in carbonated drinks. 1993, recombinant bovine growth hormone in cows. 1995, GMOs started showing up widely. Remember when we talked about what happened in 1989? Why'd everybody get crazy? 1996, Roundup Ready soy, aspartame widely used. 1996, Roundup Ready corn. 1999, GMO canola that survives glyphosate. 2003, acesulfame K as a sweetener. 1999, they introduced sucralose. 2005, GMO sugar beets. The stuff you ate growing up as a kid is not the stuff your kids are eating. It's not the stuff your grandkids are eating. That's funny. The side effects cause the same disease I'm taking the drugs for. I had to put that in there because you hear that on a daily basis. Air, water, food, chemtrails, fluoride, GMOs, poison, poison, poison. We finally have somebody in the government thinking about these things. Yes. It's crazy. I cannot believe it. I never thought I would see the day where you've got people on a stage in front of millions of people on podcasts in front of millions of people talking about the poison that's been in the water for 80 years, talking about the fake food run by 11 companies that want you dead, about the vaccines, and about what else, and the fluoride, and the stuff in the air, the chemtrails. I never thought, and here we are. Hallelujah. Reminder, the people who are against voter ID wanted you to show vaccine papers. Walking around the grocery store upset, realizing 90% of what's sold isn't even food, it's chemicals and toxins masquerading as food. Yeah, so here's the summary. You might want to take some pictures of this. This right here sums up everything you just saw into about 4 slides. The failure of synthetic vitamins, and anytime you talk to somebody and they mention this word, just know that that's not a thing. Number 2 is diabetes would dramatically increase. Number 3, genetic patterns of humans go down the toilet. Number 4, cancer would go out of control. 5, sperm counts go down the toilet. Number 6, doctors would cause more disease. Heart disease would continue. Synthetic fats would kill people. Heart disease. Pasteurized dairy and flour bleaching would contribute to the arthritis and osteoporosis degenerative epidemics. Devitalized foods. Water fluoridation, you're going to increase all the dental and periodontal disease, which is why if you drive around this town, I bet I could point out 6 or 10 new dental offices that have opened up here in the last couple of years. Yeah. And half of them are pediatric dental offices. Number 11, all the crap in food and all the chlorine in the bleach will eventually be uncovered as disease causers. 12, you got all the, bacterial resistant stuff, the antibiotic resistant bacterial diseases, autoimmune diseases, ionizable calcium will be ignored. Number 15, increased crop loss, more insects, mental illness and dementia. It's crazy. Look at that. Just 16 alone, just number 16 alone would blow your mind. How close he was, how on track he was. Drugless healing professions will increase. Hallelujah. 18, the government's going to propagandize its people. And that's just the beginning. Right? Unknown beneficial phytochemicals are going to go unidentified. Number 20 and 21, there you have it. So there's the overview, the summary of everything we just talked about in 4 or 5 slides. Any questions before we go? Did you guys learn anything? This is what we do here. This knowledge, you're not going to find it on a Google search, okay? And even if you did, managed to. Google will fact check it and tell you it's fake. Oh, speaking of that, I wanted to explain quack real quick because I think it was number 16 where they talked about quacks. I've explained this only in a previous couple of classes. I think it bears repeating here. What is really a quack? 100, 200 years ago, the dentists were in a fight. It was the golden wood guys versus the amalgam guys or the mercury guys. And they were Germans. And so the German word for mercury was quicksilver, or was Quackenslaven. You and I would call it quicksilver, but mercury, quicksilver, same thing. But the bad guys were the amalgam guys. They were using mercury. The good guys, the wood and gold guys, said, "Oh, that's poison. You guys can't use that." And so the good guys called the bad guys quacks because they were using Quackenslaven or mercury. Thus, fast forward 200 years, here we are, and day is called night, darkness is called light, evil is called good, and so now the bad guys are calling the good guys quacks. That's where that term comes from. It's the history of dentistry is where that comes from. So just FYI, know that. So when people say, "Oh, your guy's a quack," you go over there to that chiropractor that does nutrition, and "Oh, he's a quack." Really? Come and check out testimonials. Come and ask anybody that comes in here. Then go talk to your medical doctor and see how long people have been going to him on, levothyroxine for 35 years, and they still have the same problems. What they call good and evil, switch it. You will know them by their fruits, period. So we're fruity. I know you're fruity. We're very fruity. All right, let's get out of here. We'll see you the next event we have in the office, December 7th, 12 to 2, Bitcoin Remnant. That is the only Bitcoin meetup in this area. The first and only, and we are the first and only place in Cleveland to accept Bitcoin. Go home tonight, buy some Bitcoin. You'll thank me later. And then December 9th, we're going to have another wellness workshop right here on a Monday night. So you guys, thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Tell everybody you know.